Hello, everyone. This is Jasmine Kirby, and I'm here with our host, Christy Shaw from TAP, the Audacity to Pivot. If you were with us last time in December, we actually talked about the disproportionate rate of professional women losing their jobs or being underemployed um, during this time, whether it's been COVID or even beforehand. So we spoke about those trends. We backed it up with some data, and it was off air that we began to discuss some deeper issues around this demographic and this situation. And that's what we want to undertake today, is to talk a bit more about those things we talked about off air. So today's episode is going to be a bit different in our hosting and co-hosting. So going to engage our host a bit with the hope of allowing her to give voice to some of these deeper ideas and even some implications around this underemployment or unemployment of professional women. So it's with that we want to get started. So, Christy, me being a social scientist, I think what I'm seeing is you've got professional women who are unemployed and even in some cases homeless. And one might say, but you don't look homeless. But there's definitely a growing trend. So I know that you know some about this. So what got you interested in this trend, and are we really seeing a trend emerging?
Yes. Oh, so thank you so much, Jasmine. And I am so appreciative of even after we broadcast, the time and the effort that you put into this. So this is wonderful, and so thank you for that. So as you have mentioned, after last month's episode off air, I shared with you some of the things that perhaps I thought were unmentionable while we were broadcasting in December. And so I later thought about how when we were having our green room, session per se, that one of the things that we agreed to was that this would be a safe place, a no judgment zone, a space where even unmentionables would get mentioned. And so that's really why we initiated this podcast. So given that some thought, this is one of our preferred outcomes, that we want to be transparent and we want to provide a safe place for people. So it was my hope that we would have this particular person on air today. And I understand, though, she's not able to do this, but there is a story that I want to share concerning what I believe is in fact a trend that is on the rise. I think it's been a trend for a moment, but now we are starting to see a rise, because what COVID has done is accelerated all of the disparities that we've known were in existence. So hopefully she'll be able to come on at another time. But nevertheless, before I share her story, and this is with her permission, I want to revisit or dive into a little bit of data with the hope that you would speak to that afterwards and give us a broader understanding of what this really looks like. So But so before I share her story, I am going to read some of this data. So I read a 2020 article that was recently by a Leigh Johnson. It's Leigh Johnson, where she cited data from the US Census Bureau that the average gender pay gap in 2018 was around 18%, which means that women working a full-time year-round job earns about 81% as much as her male counterpart. But then she also referenced Time Magazine's calculations that a typical woman who works from age 16 to 70 will make approximately $590,000 less than a male working that identical span of time. And the point to sharing this data is that aside from the obvious is the non-obvious or yet the hidden outcome, and that is homelessness amongst this specific population of industrious, educated women. And not only has it been a silent symptom of the larger issues of ageism, pay inequality, and even diversity inequality, it's now percolating to the top, accelerating post-COVID, and as all other disparities have been. Hence, so women in all racial and ethnic groups experience higher poverty rates than white men, according to a 2019 Issue Brief article. So this is leaving them housing insecure. And then pre-COVID, however, Black women with lower incomes are evicted at an alarming higher rate than any other ethnic group. So this parlays into now what you have is an issue that's parlaying into physical and mental health issues, further exacerbating the large-scale problem of homelessness, mental illness, breakdown of households even. Because where women are at the helm, and more specifically, Black women at the helm of a household, this is a trickle-down effect. So here's the deal. I've met 3 different women, 2020 through 2021. Here we are in the earlier part of 2021, that have become homeless due to layoff pre-COVID, and one was post-COVID. And here's what they all have in common. They were 50 and over. They had college degrees. And there was no, in their minds, there were no foreseeable tenure issues prior to becoming 50-ish. So 2 had more than 6 years of tenure in their positions prior to being let go. And all 3 asserted, though I can't qualify this, I was not able to qualify it, that no male with the same tenure in their department or on their team encountered a layoff or being let go. So again, I can't qualify that, but that is something that all 3 of them asserted. So now one of them relocated from Atlanta, and it's her story that I want to share. So before my local Starbucks closed permanently, they've since closed permanently due to a COVID outbreak there. So I met seemingly serendipitously, would end up fully engaged in a discussion that would reveal this woman's conundrum. Latte in hand, she revealed that she'd lost her job and consequently her housing. No real network to speak of, or friends or family locally, and those back home were more dependent on her than she really could wanted to admit. And so clearly unable to help her bridge her fissure in income and housing, resulting in her sleeping at night in her Nissan Murano. And this is a reality that is on the rise. And it is, again, accelerated by the COVID pandemic, but it is something that was percolating all the while. So the data and the reports that we've shared previously and that we speak to now are not able to quantify this other branch off of this, which is hidden homelessness, because these women are managing the perception of homelessness. So here's the irony about this particular thing. I saw her vehicle before I met her. So in the parking lot, I saw this Nissan Murano. It's packed up, stacked up to the roof of the car with stuff in it. And I, sensitive to this topic, I thought, that's someone that's experiencing some housing transition. And now, to what extent, I would later learn. So I think one of the things that I want to do by way of this podcast, this particular episode, and maybe continue this discussion, what I would like to do, Jasmine, and why this is so passionate, why I'm so passionate about this, and in fact, why it's personal for me, is that how do we define homelessness? How are we defining it? What images are we holding captive as to what does it look like in this era? What does homelessness look like? Because none of these three women, quote, looked homeless, unquote. So, and anyway, so I'll just say this and give you, so I met all three of them in non-homeless visual circumstances. I recruited one of them, just so that I put that out there. I'd recruited one of these women. She was hired and later came to me with a card in hand to thank me, because she shared with me that prior to being hired, she had become homeless due to the previous job loss. And so there are some more information around that. And she shared that she had just come back from medical leave, and shortly thereafter, she was impacted by a reorg. And she said to me, do you think it was because I had become a burden on the health insurance costs of the company? Now, Jasmine, I am not going to answer that on air. And I am not going to say to her, I did not say to her what I really could have said to her concerning that, having been in this space for as long as I have. So I did somewhat back away from that. But what I want to share or ask, that if an employer is listening, and this invokes some sense of conviction, that as an organization, I want to ask that you take a long look into your practices. I want to ask that you incorporate some sensitivities and awareness and accountability around this group of women, and give serious consideration and proper handling to them, because there is a crisis on the rise. And I believe that it would be best if we proactively got in front of it versus waiting until it's a bigger part of the larger issue of homelessness.
And you make thank you for that. You've made a lot of compelling points that, again, as a social scientist who reads the data, reads the journals, I get it. My hunch, though, is there are some common myths that are out there and perpetuated about homelessness. Mm-hmm. And if you had an opportunity to debunk any of those myths, what might they be? And the reason I ask is